Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Yapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Twameva Mata Cha Pita Twameva Twameva Bandhuscha Sakha Twameva Twameva Vidyadravindam Twameva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So where are we in our text?
We're on page 30, the first Sanskrit.
And will you help us out with the English, because we do not have Aditi this morning?
Yeah. Vasishta, O destroyer of enemies, when good desires arise in your mind soon after the practice of yoga, know it then to be the fruit of your repeated efforts. When by the practice of easy yoga, for example, Raja Yoga, not Hatha Yoga, good desires are arisen, it should be appreciated as the result of practice. One should not doubt the impossibility of it because it happened so soon.
So, the topic under discussion, we have left the subject of renunciation, and we're dealing with the topic of thought replacement. So, Katha Upanishad says that two paths approach a person, Shreyas and Preyas. Shreyas is the good, Preyas is the desirable. So here by desirable, we want to take it in the broadest sense of the word, meaning that which is habitual. And our habituated thought flow that becomes counterproductive takes two forms. Attachment for the objects of the senses, but also negative streams of thinking. So, for example, if you watch the news and your response is, we're doomed, the world's coming to an end, everything is terrible, oh, it's so horrible, be afraid. That is just a habit. Or perhaps you go to the psychotherapist and you get in touch with your family of origin and you keep going down the rabbit hole. I was an abused child. I have PTSD. All this stuff is wrong. Now, it is of value, perhaps, to make the unconscious conscious by knowing why you have these triggers. But as Werner Erhard used to say, understanding is the booby prize. You may know exactly why you're a basket case, but that doesn't change it. And here what Vidyaranya is saying, it involves the discipline of thought replacement. And his reference here is to Yoga Sutra, the Raja Yoga tradition. And I suspect he's making reference to the first sutra in the second chapter, which is one of my favorites. Tapas, Swadhyayeshwara Pranidhana Kriya Yoga. Tapas, austerity. Swadhyaya. In the Raja Yoga tradition, Swadhyaya just simply means self-study. But it doesn't mean my own study of the scripture like it does in the Vedanta tradition. It means my psychological inventory. These are my positive traits, and these are the character traits that get me into trouble. Capacity to stand back and say, okay, I have, here's a very common one, catastrophization. If I dwell on all the possible negatives that can happen in the future, then I'm prepared for it. I'm going in for surgery. Well, I could die, or even worse, I could be permanently disabled, and I'm in a nursing home, and then I'm destitute financially, and my spouse is going to be wringing their hands for all eternity. Do we do those sorts of things? Or regret for the past? How could I have done that? I will never forgive myself for having done this or that to that person or this person. All of this is an inventory of what my habituated negative thinking is, or my attachments, or my identifications. Then we do tapas. Tapas literally means heat. It's the paurusham, the effort to discipline the mind, to turn it from its habituated, non-productive modes of thinking into what we call suvecha, auspicious desire. My desire to study scripture, my desire to meditate, my desire to give up attachment to experiences gained through the senses, my desire to give up identification with a personal sense of self. These are called suvecha. Keeping holy company. Do I want to go out to the nightclub and get loaded, or would I rather come to a Vedanta class? We have these choices. So here Vidyaranya is saying that through this practice, tapas, swadhyayeshwara pranidhana kriya yoga. I forgot the third aspect. Ishwara pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. In the end, we need the help of the infinite. Now, what he's also implying here is the more we align ourselves with the Dharma, the intelligent way to live, the universe starts to support us in what we're doing. We get help from the infinite. And he calls this yoga in action. That's what Patanjali does. Here, Vidyaranya can also be making a reference to what we call the yamas and niyamas, those very basic practices of developing a good ethical and moral life. Things, and I was reading one commentator who said all of those basically boil down to ahimsa, non-injury. Don't hurt others, don't hurt yourself. Now, the good news on this maxim that the mind prefers the familiar, it will frequently prefer the familiar to the good, is if we make this subhecha, this auspicious desire, this intelligent activity, our new normal, then we don't have to have the feeling that it's tapas, that it's austerity. We just do it. Let me give you a worldly example. So Mark is here. Mark has also, like myself, gone through the period of losing a significant portion of his eyesight. So he asks for a cup of coffee. Notice the cup has a white interior. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Have you tried to pour coffee into a dark cup yet? What happens?
Yeah.
All over your hand. No contrast. So you see this trivet on the table, which is at least 6 inches in diameter. That's called a blind guy's coaster. So what have I done over the 24 years since I've lost my sight? I have all sorts of coping mechanisms. It's my new normal. There's no longer effort to do so many of these things. It's just the way I do stuff. Are you finding that sort of thing too?
I have to make these adaptations.
But after a while, the adaptations are not an effort.
Right.
In the beginning, it's incredibly overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah. Right.
And then it becomes the new normal.
Right. That's right.
So the same idea with yoga. We make our yoga the new normal. And I like to tell people, I've been a crappy yogi. Oh, the mistakes I've made, the side trips I've gone down, the self-justifications and rationalizations I've made. I won't go into the specifics, it's not important. But I have been steadfast for 49 years. Keep at it. So the life of a yogi is my normal mind state now. And in time, it becomes easy because the rewards start to show up. Remember the ruthless rule of the mind. The mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. The fool thinks striving, struggling, acquiring, being important is going to make him happy. But the yogi begins to see, thinking less of the small self, living a life of service, simplicity as opposed to acquisition, detachment, acceptance, surrender makes the mind far more peaceful. So we start to move more in the direction of the Dharma because it feels better. All right, next verse.
Vasishta, even if you are in doubt, carry on with the practice to acquire good impressions. Oh dear, there is no harm whatever in increasing of good desires. When practicing good desires, doubt may arise about the completion of the practice. In such case, one should go on with the practice, such as is the case where one has started to repeat some mantra 1,000 times, and while repeating and keeping count, doubts the 10th, 100th, then should again repeat it for another 100. If it was incomplete, now will be completed, and in case it was complete, the increase in no way harms the 1,000 japa.
Yeah. So frequently a teacher will say, okay, here's the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. You're supposed to do it 1,008 times every day. Very common kind of assignment. So you're doing it with your mala, trying to keep track, and you lose track of the number of times. Here Vasishta says, if you add an extra 100 repetitions, there's no harm. There's no harm doing it more than the assignment. So here Vasishta is saying the increase in your good character is in no way deleterious. Now, Swamiji coined a phrase which I have always loved. He wrote a series of books. They're actually pretty much commentaries on Gita, called The Art of Man Making. Have any of you read those? They're lovely. They're lovely. What I like about it is his view of what the process here is. We are not immoral people trying to become virtuous. We're not sick people trying to get well. That's a more psychological model. We're not broken people trying to become healed. This thing called a human being, or to use Swamiji's language, this thing called man, consists of a body, mind, and intellect. What it is an art form. So you have your 60, 70, 80, 90 years, if you're lucky. For those of us who are north of a certain age, you find that an entire life goes by so fast. What are you going to do with it? So the yogi sees this thing called a human life, and can you make of it something of beauty? Something that's contributing to the well-being of the society? Can you culture a character? And I'm not talking about whether or not you've got big biceps or something like that. We don't mean that kind of beauty. We mean the perfume of deep spirituality in the character of a human being. Now, in the end, we get out of it all. But at this level of our practice, we started with renunciation. Now, what Vidyaranya is talking about and quoting Vasishtha is this art of man-making. So we're not being a goody-goody so that we're rewarded by some God out there. We're not doing it for the approval of others. In the end, the idea of character analysis, change from negative or non-productive thinking and acting into more conducive ways of being in the world. It's a fascinating process. Why does a painter paint a painting? Has something to say, something they want to communicate. The beauty itself is of value. I was watching a series of lectures from Wigmore Hall in Britain on the life of Franz Schubert. Why he wrote, what he was trying to do, what he was trying to say. And for sensitive people, the spiritual life becomes a great way to deal with our deep sensitivity. We want to be an artist. Stand back, look at this thing called a human being, and make of it something of beauty and something of use to the society. As opposed to thinking of it as gimme, 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 greedy, 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 more, better, different. It's all about my desires. All right, any thoughts on this process? Back to our idea of the art of man-making. So I always have this idea of there's a painter out at Ocean Beach painting the seascape. And they decide that the sky and the clouds need a little bit more white in them. They don't take a knife and stab the canvas because it isn't right. Well, they look at the canvas, they look at the sea and the sky, and they say, it needs a little more white here. So how about you and I? Why did I do that? I'm such a terrible person. How could I have done this? I'm so bad. That's like the artist taking a knife, slashing the canvas. Doesn't do anything. It's very different than saying, I let my anger produce karmic results that I'm not sure I like. I think I'm going to work on pausing when I get practicing some restraint of speech. Well, I didn't do too well today. We'll work on it more tomorrow. Think of it as an art. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Vasishta, as long as your mind is not capable of reflecting the unity of Brahman and Atman, and that the supreme state is not yet realized, continue to practice in accordance with the teacher, scripture, and other valid evidence.
So, in the end, we quit trying to fix the equipment. In the end, when you realize Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. When we realize Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, all this phenomenal world is verily Brahman. We get out of the way completely. Before we are in that state, when we're still a jinyasu, a seeker after knowledge, a mumukshu, a seeker after liberation, a sadhak, can continue to practice. What do we practice? Viveka. Discrimination between the real and the unreal. Vairagya. Letting go of our attachments. Letting go of our personal sense of identification. Shamadhi guna, qualities of shama, etc. Tuning up the mind. Mumukshutva, doing our best to take all the passion of the heart, focus it towards liberation. Next verse.
And when the obstacle in the form of love-hate desires is ripe, for example, will cause no more hindrance, and you have the direct and immediate awareness of the ultimate reality, then you striving for complete calm of the mind should give up all collection of desires, even the good ones.
Yes. So now, when we've attained to yoga rudha, yoga arudha, mounting the steed of the mind, when we're no longer afflicted by desires, when all the data of the world, you just let it pass through without grabbing it. Now we give up even the good desires. So it's a process. Renunciation first as best we can. Then this effort to let go of inauspicious thoughts, feelings, actions, replacing them with auspicious ones. And now Vasishta says, now give up even those. Sarvamaya, Sarvamana, that's all Maya. It's all bliss. and all our strivings cease, even the striving for self-realization. How long should I keep practicing, Jim? As long as the mind throws up doubts. As long as your doubts seem real to you. Continue to do toughness. When you have no doubts about your essential nature, no doubts about the dreamlike nature of the phenomenal world. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman alone is real. The phenomenal world is Mithya, illusion, false, a hologram, fake news, alternative facts. If we forget, means ignorance is still having dominion over the mind at times. At those times, we do tapas. That's simple. Till we are sthita prajna, person of steady wisdom. Till we are a full knower of the Supreme, until the mind has retired into the Supreme. Next verse.
With the help of the good desires, you should follow the path treaded by the great rishis, leading to the greatest good, and realize the state which is Advaita. Afterwards, give up everything. For example, those means by which Advaita knowledge is accomplished, and stay well in your real form. The meaning of the foregoing verses is clear. So by practice of yoga, lust, etc., can be neutralized. Hence, liberation in life should no more be argued against. Thus, the nature of Jivan Mukti is explained.
So, one might say, why should I bother for being this Jivan Mukti? What's the payoff? I'd much rather go after cash and prizes. Go for it. But how's it working out for you? And if people are honest, I like to say 95 cents worth of work for a nickel's worth of pleasure. It's just bad economics in the end. So until knowledge dawns in the mind, till the yogi develops the trick of being able to abandon the world, have the mind come home to the self. Vidyaranya here says, practice. Practice in a specific way, that which is suggested. One by Shruti, the scriptures, by the great sages, which your own logical reasoning comes up with, ultimately based on your direct experience. If you've had even just moments where you let go of the mind, go of all the struggling, accepted life on life's terms. You have that feeling of the mind just deep, deep peace. Not caused by any object or any person. It's clear that its cause is the absence of the craving mind. It starts to make sense. Next verse.
The existence and attainability of Jivan Mukti is indicated by the Vedic and Smriti texts. They are found in the Kathavali and other texts. There in the Kathavali it reads, "The especially liberated is liberated outright. While alive, being particularly free from the visible bondage of lust, etc., becomes altogether free from the future bondage after the fall of this body. Even prior to knowledge, by practicing control of the internal and external organs, the mind, etc., one becomes free from desires, etc. But in this case, the control of desire, etc., that has arisen is by efforts. In the case of a Jivan Mukta, desire, etc., do not arise, since there is no transformation in the mind. Hence it is said, especially liberated. And similarly, during the dissolution of the universe and after the fall of the body, an individual is liberated for some time from the bondage of the future body. But in the case of the Jivan Mukta, the liberation is outright. And having this in mind, it is said, especially.
So, part of Hindu cosmology, spiritual anthropology, what happens after a person dies. So it says for the person in ignorance, depending on their good deeds or bad deeds, they go to Punya Loka, some realm where they get the benefits of their merits, or Papaloka, Naraka, some hell realm, where you experience torment from your bad deeds, and then you eventually reincarnate, Manushya Loka. You come back to the human realm. So the physical body is incredibly temporary. It is the subtle body that goes through these reincarnations. It says that if you do specific rituals and you're all overall a good person, even though you may not become liberated in this life, you go to Brahmalok, and at the end of the age, you're liberated. That's certainly their particular cosmology. But what Vidyaranya is saying, actually, you can be liberated right here, right now, in this very lifetime. And the cause of reincarnation is gone. What is the cause of reincarnation? The cause of it is Come, pray me. Well, this didn't work. I'll be happy when. It'll be better if. More better different. Now, you don't need to believe in reincarnation. Just look at what happens in this one lifetime.
Sure.
Yes.
Is there any strain or any uh, any well, part of Vedanta or any teaching in Vedanta that teaches that actually the only real liberation is the liberation in this lifetime. That the rest is belief and ideology and
Not
comfortable.
directly,
Not
because
directly,
it does not contradict scripture.
right.
That would be like saying, I'm a Christian,
Mhm.
but the resurrection of Jesus is mythology.
Mhm.
You may believe that,
Yeah.
but you don't write and talk about it and establish a non-resurrection sect of Christianity.
Right. Okay.
So what Vidyaranya is saying, and certainly what Mandukya says, is in a sense, you've got it all upside down. You do not reincarnate. So, for example, do you incarnate into a dream? Now, the dream is certainly an experience, but you are not in the dream is in you. So Mandukya thunders, you never really incarnate into a body. It's just a very long and very vivid dream. Vedanta, in the end, thunders what we call the doctrine of ajati. You are unborn. Now, this is why some people say Shankara and the other people in the Advaita school are veiled Buddhists. This is what the Upanishads thunder. But they teach this idea of reincarnation because it's there in the Vedic scriptures. How it got there, what layers it is, we don't need to go into it. I always teach you do not need to believe in it. But for example, how many professions have you had in this lifetime, Mark?
4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point, you move from one profession to another because you thought it would be better, more productive, more useful, etc. And now you're how old?
70, almost 77.
Yeah, and you're not working?
No.
Were any of those jobs fundamentally any different?
No.
It's all the same Mishigas, right?
Yeah. Right.
Now you know that. But if you're going from school teacher to journalist to lawyer to whatever jobs you had, it all seems like, oh, this is a great idea. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
That's reincarnation.
Right.
You did it in this life.
Right. All right.
Now, from the standpoint of like what Mandukya teaches, you were never a journalist, a teacher, or a lawyer. You were always Brahman. You just dreamt you were a teacher or a lawyer. No different than if you had a dream last night that you were corralling horses. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, that's the most useful way to use this. Doesn't matter whether reincarnation is real or not. Our experiences, we go from situation to situation based on desire. For the Jivan Mukta, the cause for that is God. No external situation is going to improve you.
Right.
Now, you and I have a very real thing we can talk about. So you've lost a significant portion of your eyesight. Now you've got other health things going on. But as you sit there, and nothing particularly hurts, hopefully, today, aren't you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, no, I am okay.
Now you can wreck that if you want to go into the future. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure.
Oh, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And the truth is, in the now, the self is never touched. And I love what Ramdas says. Even dying is completely safe.
Right.
Now, let's say he's lying. And when it just lights out and you're gone,
Mhm.
being dead doesn't hurt. Even if the teaching about what happens after death is wrong, it's still okay.
Still worth the struggle for liberation in the sense of the
In the sense, right here, right now, it maximizes the quality of life. That's the value. Let's assume being dead, there's no awareness of anything. Well, you do that every night. Are you afraid of sleep?
no, no, you're right. No, I have. That's my belief actually. That it's like going to sleep, and there's no.
And what do you know for sure? I'll tell you if you're like me. What I know for sure is I don't know.
Right. That's right.
I have every reason to believe everything that I've practiced. Self is immortal, birth was changeless, and deathless. But maybe I'm wrong. So,
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this out in Zoom land? So what the Giranya is saying, so we're old guys with medical problems. You can worry about it, or you can accept life on life's terms, deal with it as best you can, and stay in the now. We're not dead today.
And in a sense, the now, any kind of future now will be no real different, not different at all from the present now. From
Look to the past to get an idea. So when you were a journalist, when you were a teacher, when you were an attorney, what changed and what didn't?
It's always the now.
The circumstances changed. There were good days and bad days in the external world. There were days when your body hurt and the days when your body didn't hurt. whatever age you're at. But you, as witnessing consciousness, did not change. Whether you were mentally aware of that or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and won't change regardless of whether I live another day or another 10 years or so.
And will it be lights out when you die? Or does the self continue to be, as the scriptures say? Well, we'll find out when we get there. Okay, next verse.
The Brihadaranyaka reads, when all the desires that dwell in his heart are gone, then he, having been immortal, becomes immortal and attains Brahman in this very body.
And again, when we say desires, kama, we have to make the distinction between a preference and a craving, an insistence. It's the cravings, it's the insistence, it's that state of mind that in order to be okay, in order to be happy, I either have this, that, or the other thing, or be rid of this, that, or the other thing. Preferences are not problematic. What's the difference? I can let go of a preference. We go out for lunch after class. Oh, let's go to Guru Curry House. We walk down to Guru Curry House. Guess what? They're closed on Wednesdays. Okay, let's go to Insaro. Let's go to the Korean place. Preferences. Oh, so and so has left me. I can't live without them. And it doesn't mean we don't enjoy. Please understand that. The paradox is the man of wisdom can enjoy with an intensity that the ordinary person can't. The ordinary person is always worried about losing what they got. And Shankara says, then you're like a person at a banquet with a thorn in your throat. You can go to a museum and see a beautiful painting. It doesn't mean you want to take it home and hang it on your wall, for God's sake. Let it be where it is and what it is. And when you're done appreciating it, you'll walk away. The intensity of the now then starts to reveal itself. All right, next verse.
In another Shruti, it is said, though with eyes is as if without eyes, though with ears is as if without ears, though with mind is as if without mind, though with life is as if without life. Examples of the same are found in other texts also. In different smritis, a Jivan Mukta is indicated by different names, such as Sthita Prajna, who has attained to the highest knowledge which is unshakable. Bhagavad Bhakta, who is completely merged in God. Gunatita, one who has transcended this phenomenal existence composed of the three gunas or qualities. Brahmana, who has attained the self. Advarnash Raman, one who is beyond the reach of the four classes and the four stages in social life, etc. In the conversation between Vasishta and Rama, a Jivan Mukta has been described in the part of the text beginning with, among men who are absorbed in knowledge, to the existence alone remains.
So let's parse some of this. Read the first part again for me, please.
In another Shruti, it is said, though with eyes is as if without eyes.
Okay,
ears,
I get that. I remember that part now. So the idea is, even though for the ordinary person, the senses and the mind stimulate desire and aversion, for the Jivan Mukta, he keeps his mind centered in the self. Yes, he perceives the world, but his mind doesn't extrovert into it. Just like the person who sees the mirage in the desert. He does not thirst after the water because he knows heat waves off the sun. Then I think the first reference he did was Gita, Sthita Prajna, was that right?
Jivan Mukta.
Jivan Mukta simply means a liberated soul. What's the next example he uses?
Sthita Prajna.
Which means, prajna means wisdom, sthita means established. So the second chapter of Gita, the last verses, are the descriptions of the Sthita Prajna Purusha, the person of steady wisdom. What was the next example?
Bhagavad Bhakta.
The Lord of devotion is what that literally means. He was totally devoted to the self. The next idea?
Gunatita.
Beyond the gunas, the qualities of the mind don't touch him in any way. Next one.
Brahmana.
Means someone established in Brahman. We skipped one about Varna.
That's the next one.
Okay, next one.
Ativarnasa Ramin.
Meaning beyond all the various castes. So you might say, okay, you get your first human birth, you're a Shudra, and if you do a good job, then you become a Vaishya, and if you do a good job in that lifetime, you get to be a Kshatriya, and then if you're a really good Kshatriya, then you get to be a Brahmin. And here he's saying nonsense to it all. All of it is just various dreams. Is that all of them?
He mentions Jivan Mukta, but that's it.
We've already talked about that. Someone who's liberated while in this very body. What is the mark of a Jivan Mukta? He is not identified with the body. He is not identified with the subtle body. is identified with the self. All right, one more.
Vasishta, among men who are in the pursuit of knowledge alone by contemplating self-knowledge, that state of liberation in life arises, which is like the liberation after the dissolution of the body. The state of being in the pursuit of knowledge alone, yanaikanishta, means giving up of all other works, Vedic as well as secular. The two types of liberation mentioned are distinguished only by the presence or absence of the body and the sense organs. The experience is the same because the awareness of plurality is absent in both of them.
So we have this apparent distinction between being Jivan Mukta, liberated while in the body, and Videha Moksha, liberation beyond the body. Actually, they're the same thing. The mark of the man of wisdom is he knows he's not the body. I am beyond the body. Whether the body shows up as a dreamlike appearance or it falls down makes no difference. The liberated soul is in this very life, liberated beyond the body. So, we're sitting here in my living room and you see a bowl on the coffee table. Are you a bowl? No. If I remove the bowl from the coffee table, have you changed? No. I'm not the empty space where the bowl was either. So in a sense, these distinctions between Jivan Mukta and Videha Moksha aren't really valid. Therefore, those people in ignorance who see the Mahatma walking around and then, oh, he's dead. He's now Videha Mukti. No. Self goes nowhere. Somebody used to say, find out who the Guru is. Beginning, I thought it was this little man in the orange robes. And in the end, I would just go sit in Swamiji's presence. There was this deep, deep empty. Then he told us to get established in that ourselves. And then when we got the news that Swamiji had died, that deep emptiness went nowhere. All right, we'll quit here. What verse are we on for next week?
We're on page 34, the second verse.
Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om.